Before the snowy lands of Snezhnaya arrive, let's take a walk around Nod-Krai again and check out names and possible references to Russian culture. Starting the tour with the biggest landmark of the last map expansion, Pyramida. As you might have guessed it means pyramid, if you were to say it with a heavy Russian accent. But we are here to enjoy the statue of Lightkeeper's founder, Solovei. He is a Snezhnaya nobleman, coming from a house that uses nightingale as its symbol. It is not a coincidence. Solovei is a Russian word for a small bird that sings in praise of the sun. But the writer's choice for this name goes deeper. Solovei is a well-known fairy tale antagonist, with first written mentions going back as far as 17th century. He is a highwayman, strong but deadly for oblivious travelers. Solovei is remembered as a respected founding father in modern Nod-Krai, but his story starts with a big robbery, and some past Frost Moon science even consider him to be a treacherous murderer. The history is written by those who live to tell it, and Solovei's good deeds overshadow his questionable misconducts of youth. Just like the last time, I would like to note lovely work done on Nod-Krai NPCs' names. Hardworking ladies of White Sea Outlook Teleport have names that you can meet in modern Russia: Inga, Alena, Uliana. Wandering merchant Kuzmich is named in an interesting manner. Kuzmich is not a first name, but a patronymic. However, sometimes patronymics can be used to address a person in a friendly, pal-like manner, and it does often happen amongst blue-collar workers. As for surnames, Chernov and Kotelnikov are quite common, while Domovoi is quite a funny surname to have. In Russian folklore, Domovoi is a mythical creature that protects the home. But considering that Nod-Krai citizen with this surname is about to start a family himself, maybe this is a take on talking surnames. This literary trope is very common in classic literature, when an author deliberately tells a character's most important quality through their last name. Gogol's works, for example, are filled to the brim with characters whose images can be drawn based on their surnames alone. A hoarder would have a last name meaning box, or a daydreamer would have a surname meaning charmed. One of the most well-known examples from English literature is Charles Dickens' protagonist Scrooge, taken after the verb meaning to squeeze. Seeing this very classic trope used for Genshin storytelling certainly takes me back to literature classes. But speaking of telling names, at this point you've probably already discovered the dark truth behind the Apocalypse Bunker. Knowing Russian had spoiled the plot of this world quest for me, albeit only a couple minutes before it would have been told anyway. You see, the surname Morozov, as common as it might be, in Soviet Russia underwent a transformation from a compliment to an insult. In 1932, a boy called Pavlik Morozov reported his own father to the political police for unjust enrichment, which to a communist government was a crime akin to betrayal of the state. Unfortunately, Pavlik's remaining family did not appreciate the gesture and ended his life the same year. This tragic story was spun by the state as an act of revolution against the oppressors, and multiple statues of Pavlik were built, alongside many schools renamed in his honor. However, despite clear support for Pavlik's martyrdom, behind closed doors Stalin himself seemed to be not so fond of the boy, calling him a swine for betraying his own father. With the collapse of the Soviet Union, new evidence had emerged. Nowadays, the entire story is considered to be fabricated, and the real Pavlik Morozov seemed to fall as an unintended victim in his parents' love affairs. Despite these revelations, even in modern Russia, his name can occasionally be heard as a synonym for a traitor. So it's no surprise that to someone with this association ingrained from childhood, the ending to the world quest becomes clear from the first mention of Supervisor Morozov. But that's not the only notable surname in this world quest. Senior research from Miklucho and Professor Verkhatsky, whose works are used as a base for Bunker's experiments, are also named quite cleverly. Ivan Verkhovsky is an actual botanist from 19th century, most known for documenting and describing local Ukrainian plants, with his work still being the largest of its kind. Researcher Miklucha takes his surname after a famous traveler and biologist Miklucha Maklai, who was way ahead of his time in his humanist views. Both naming choices are quite fitting for the story of the bunker, aren't they? Without going too far away, let's buy a book of Reed Miller's legends in Nasha town. The third volume tells us about a young man called Zima, which is a Russian word for winter. Zima is seeking to live out a legendary story and not go down in a boring manner, like those who fell to Snegurочka's revengeful gaze. Unlike Genshin's characterization, Snegurочка is a lovely fairy tale character. She is a granddaughter of Russian version of Santa Claus, a child made of snow, very well-loved guest for every New Year celebration, even in modern Russia. The fact that Winter doesn't want to fall in love with a snow maiden adds to the odd story in this legend. The second volume tells the story of Governor Trubetskoy and his adoptive daughter. Trubetsky are a well-known noble family, with many members being renowned artists and politicians. Governor's daughter, Leonida Prokhorovna Trubetskaya, is named in a peculiar manner. Her name is not something you will hear in Russia, and it seems to have a Spanish origin, while her patronymic Prokhorovna is used 100% correctly. If you haven't read the story, please do. It's quite fun and tells us a bit about Nod-Krai ruler prior to the cataclysm. But what about the history of Snezhnayan rulers? With the book A Brief History of a Pale Starborn, we can learn a bit about it. The pre-cataclysm capital of Snezhnaya was the city of Kitish, raised by the first known to us Kraya Archon, Monomach Snezhny. The word Snezhny is simple, it means snowy. But what does Monomach mean? It is a nickname used by a ruler from 11th century, Vladimir Monomach. He had taken this alias to reflect his mother's ancestry. She was a noble woman from a Byzantine empire. Surprisingly, due to his lineage, in official documents he would use the title of Archon. Monomach Snezhny had a younger brother that he slew by accident, his grief covering the land in never-ending winter. Accidental killing of the king might be a reference to a well-known episode from Ivan the Terrible rule, who killed his own son. After defeating the Volkodlak king threatening Snezhnaya, Monomach moved the capital to Snezhnograd, which in Russians means snowy town, and crowned himself as Belый Tsar, meaning white king. The head of the enemy is said to be stored in the Zapolarny Palace, current residency of the Kraya Archon. Zapolarny in Russian means the area north of the Arctic Circle. The chronicle gives us the name of modern Tsaritsa, Anastasia Fedorovna. It is a weird mix of names. Tsaritsa's patronymic is the same as the one of the last Russian empress, Alexandra Fedorovna. Anastasia is her first daughter, rumored to escape the execution of the royal family in 1918. The theme of recognition and right to rule can already be spotted in Tsaritsa's story. The Snowland Fae refused to recognize her, leading to them taking over a region of Snezhnaya, including the most important port, Belovodye, which in Russian means white waters. With newly established force, the Fatui, Tsaritsa overtook these lands, confirming her rule over full Snezhnaya. She started Snezhnograd Veche, a citizen assembly held to address political and administrative issues, early form of direct democratic institute. But have you heard the latest news from Snezhnaya? Little is known about it yet, but 11 Fatui harbingers were involved in some grand-scale project called Stuzha. This name alone tells us a bit about what to expect. Stuzha is a Russian word for severe cold. Are we ready to freeze in Snezhnayan lands? Thank you so much for watching this video. If you found it interesting, please leave it a like and consider subscribing to not miss the future ones. I will see you soon. Bye bye!